So welcome to Making Everything Go Accordingly. I want to express to you that an investment is spending time, energy, or effort into a situation with the expectation of a worthwhile result. So I'm going to be considering us as the CEO of our own investment company, because when we put out our emotions, we definitely putting out an investment. We're going to get into it. Making everything go accordingly. Holla. I'd like to welcome you again to Making Everything Go Accordingly. And so, this is part 3 of solutions for emotional freedom. So what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss where the source of our emotions are controlled. And that's in our brain, and that portion of the brain is called the limbic system. The limbic system is basically the distributor of all chemicals that go throughout our brain based on the emotional impacts that we have. It's all controlled through our senses. The limbic system, this portion of your brain, it gets its name from lemon, because it's shaped like a lemon. It sits right in front of your cerebellum on the lower level of your brain, the cerebellum, aka the reptilian brain. There are 4 key components that send information to your prefrontal cortex in order to make a final decision on whether or not we take flight or we fight, whether we respond or we react. And so what I want to express to you is that it is very important that we understand where the basics comes from, where that foundation comes from. And so the limbic system has 4 major components that I want you to remember. 1 is the thalamus. Number 2 is the amygdala. Number 3, the hippocampus. And number 4 would be a hypothalamus. Okay, all of these send signals in order to make sure that the right response is being presented based off of what we've learned in our experiences. The thalamus is once we see and once we go through an experience that we've had, that we are able to reflect on, that gives us a certain response or a certain reaction. Once that comes into our sight, it sends it down to the amygdala, and the amygdala is the really emotional part of the limbic system, in which sends the information to the hippocampus to find out what information has been stored based off of the circumstance that we're faced with. From that point, once it determines how we need to react or respond to the situation, it sends that information back up to the amygdala, and the amygdala sends that information right down to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus from there determines whether or not we take fight or flight. It sends that information to our prefrontal cortex, in which is the CEO of the decisions that's made on how we react or respond to a situation. So we have to remember that there's going to be storms that we're going to have to be able to weather through. And the only person that I know, from my personal experience, that'll be able to help you with the joy and the peace that passes all understanding is the man up above. You renew your mind by putting knowledge into yourself that helps your own betterment. But we have to understand that we have to have a desire to want to be able to change and be a better version of ourselves. So when these toxic emotional impacts take place in our lives, or when these extreme emotional impacts come into our lives, they do not change the validity of who we are. Association and experience is what causes fear or causes us to gain strength in situations. So what I want us to be able to understand, that there is a process to which we can control how we react or how we respond to certain situations. Everything is important so that we can become better people and add value to our lives. Because if you don't see your worth, you wind up paying the cost without knowing the price. I want you to look more into the limbic system, but this is going to continue over into part 4 so that we'll be able to break down and have a really good idea of how we need to handle reaction or response based off of emotional impacts and circumstances that we have in our lives. But we have so many pieces and so many portions of our brain that if we transferred it over to a piece of paper and we had the amount of pieces of paper that we have for pieces of brain we have, it's enough to stretch from California to London. So just imagine how different each individual is. But we have to understand ourselves first. We're making everything go accordingly. See, again, our thoughts, they're governed by our objective beliefs. They're governed by what has taken place in our life. Our brain is set up to protect us. It's set up for survival. So when we see certain situations, if it feels like it might be a threat, our brain starts to put together chemicals that need to be distributed throughout our body in order to react through our emotions.